and welcome back to the Sporting Global podcast. And today we have with us Dídac Lee. Dídac, thank you so much for taking the time. How's life in Spain and Barcelona these days?
Well, everything is as good as it can get due to the situation, but we have a wonderful day today and everything is good.
We just gotta focus on the good things, right? You know, that's what matters. Of course, it's been a challenge. I think everyone is when is 2020 going over? We need the 2021. For some reason, I think everyone thinks it's gonna be fine at January 1st, but let's
no, I don't think it's about the 2021. It's about to have a vaccine.
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, today, we have a very interesting topic on our hands. We're very glad that you, Dídac, will be with us and talk about this. And, we're going to dive into a little bit of an business angel's perspective on what kind of, opportunities are out there for the sports startups, what kind of challenges they're facing. And it's just we're gonna dig a little bit into, your background and your experience, which is a vast majority within the startup ecosystem. So, but before we do that, I think it would be great if you could just share a little bit about, your background, your experience, a little bit about your journey. So, our viewers, our listeners can get to know a little bit about you.
Sure, of course. I'm Dídac. My parents are Chinese, but I was born and raised in Spain. I'm from a small town called Figueras.
Nice.
1 hour and a half ago from Barcelona, more or less, okay. Where the Ddac Lee Museum, we have a famous painter here.
Right.
And my family was the very first non-Caucasian family in our province. So I grew up thinking that I was the only Chinese guy in the world. And when my mom teach me Chinese, I was so annoyed because I said, that's totally useless. We are the only Chinese family in the world. Why should I learn Chinese? Because here we have Spanish, we have Catalan. So it was very tough for me, for them.
I can imagine.
But yeah, and when I was a kid, I was totally different physically, but when I play football, I feel myself integrated with the local society. For me, the team sports was a way to integrate myself in with the society. And I think my interest into sports started then. My childhood dream was to be a professional football player and play for FC Barcelona.
Nice.
But unfortunately for me, I was so bad, I was not able even to play in my school team. So I think I had to change my mind. And at the age of 10, I think, I started with computers. I started to code my own software. I went to the university. My dream was to build something related with computers. I have not a clear idea. And then after 2 years starting the university, I discovered internet and I founded my first company. It was an internet service provider.
Nice.
And this was 25 years ago. 25 years ago. It's been a long time. And since then, I've been building companies since I was 21 until today. Yeah, and I'm the founder of 8 companies, around 800 people, 300 million in revenues.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, I started to invest as a business angel and professionally with my investment fund that we are investing in other funds in Silicon Valley and China, mainly.
Okay.
And some parts of Europe.
Right.
And I didn't make it for become a professional football player, but I joined the board of FC Barcelona 10 years ago. And I've been board member for 10 years until 1 month ago, more or less. And,
so you still ended up in FC Barcelona, though, in a sense, you know?
Yeah, in a sense, yes. I think if you can make it for become a professional football player, you might be board member.
Right. You know,
that's the closest that you can get. And yeah, this has been the summary of my journey until today.
That's awesome, and there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge from there. I'm just thinking, like, also like technological wise, right? How much has happened the last 25 years? You know, like I'm 29 now, and I'm just thinking, like, whoa, all the
4 years.
yeah. So like essentially, like the journey that you've been part of, like technologically too, has been massive. And I mean, like, I guess we can talk a little bit about that too, but I'm kind of like curious. Of course, you mentioned a little bit like, okay, you had this dream of like working for or playing for FC Barcelona one day, but like, what was sort of like your first involvement in the sport business industry, sort of like from a professional standpoint?
Sure. I love sports, and even that I started with an internet service provider, that it was a more engineering kind of business.
Right.
20 years ago, I co-founded an e-commerce of scuba diving supplies. And this company nowadays is one of the top outdoor retailers in Europe. And since then, I've been involved in several sports tech business or digital sports business.
Right.
Because I've been witnessing how technology transform several industries, and I think now is the time for sports.
For sure.
Yeah.
What makes sort of like the sport industry unique for you in a sense? I mean, like everyone talks a little bit about passion. I mean, like we saw like this video as well. I don't know if you've seen it, but like from Mark Cuban, he talked about like, you know, when he took over like Dallas Mavericks as an owner and like all the business success he's had, but that feeling when in like Dallas Mavericks did something well, like the entire city, you know, of Dallas like went nuts. So like I was kind of like you felt, you know, that sort of, you know, emotion. I guess like you've been feeling some part of it being part of the board of FC Barcelona, but can you talk a little bit about like what makes the sport industry like unique for you, and sort of like why do you want to be, or why have you kind of like get yourself involved in that?
Yeah, I think it's in my case, it was something very coincidental. I mean that I didn't mean to be a sports tech entrepreneur.
Right.
Because my passion was scuba diving.
Right.
And it was very hard for me to find scuba diving supplies for them, because I live in a small town and the big shops were in Barcelona or Madrid.
Right.
And in Spain, is a very seasonal sport, and there's not much stock of the equipment that I wanted to buy. That's why I thought to start a scuba diving e-commerce. And it started with scuba diving, but nowadays we have 14 verticals. And I think everything in life all the ventures start with a need, deep need that you have. And in my case, it was I want to find scuba diving supplies and I cannot buy. It sounds stupid and it's very silly, but for me, it was a big pain 25 years ago, you know, because 25 years ago, it's not like today that you go to Amazon and you have everything. 25 years ago, and especially if you live in a small city, you have nothing. No Decathlon
for everything.
Yes, and everything was very limited. So I think everything started with a need, started with a passion.
Right.
And in the case of sports, I think it's very interesting because you can live sports in several points of view. You can, as somebody that is doing a sport that is very healthy, lifestyle, you can see the sports as fun, which is great. That this is more the entertaining part of sport, because I believe in the intersection of sport and entertainment. And
for sure.
As a fan, you watch your team winning, and that's about passion. That is not about doing a sport. I mean, to watch, again, you can get annoyed or you can get very happy, you know, depending on the performance of your team. No?
Right.
So I think that's I think the difference between sports and other verticals in technology is sport. There's the passion, the emotion, the engagement. Because if you are into cybersecurity, maybe you can love what you do. That can be wonderful. But it's not the same engagement.
For sure.
It's not the same.
For sure. So, I mean, like, obviously, like, let's talk a little bit about what possibilities, though, do you see right now for sports tech startups? Because obviously, you know, 2020 has been like a crazy year for everyone. I don't know how we're still, you know, coping up with everything that is going on, but it's just that everyone is like, the faith that things will go back, you know, to maybe not normal, but, you know, things will go better. And we always talk about the whole thing, like, with crisis comes innovation, right? So, like, it's also a great opportunity. And from your side, like, what kind of opportunities do you see now in the sport business industry?
Sure. I think tech and digital has been transforming several industries.
For sure.
And when somebody asks me, where is the best industry to invest? I used to answer, look for an industry that has been not the digitalized yet.
Right.
And sport, in my point of view, is starting to have this digital transformation. So I think now is the right time for this industry.
Right.
And I think everything is pretty new. I think this is because people feel sport is something that is very healthy, is a good lifestyle. I remember 25 years ago, if you go to the street and you go to run, people would look at you like if you are a freak. You know?
Right.
Today, if you don't do that, you are the freak. You know.
Right.
So I think this is changing. So that's why sport with technology and sport enhanced with technology, it makes a lot of sense. And if you can see all the brands like Garmin, Sunto, they are building smart devices for sports. That's why I think everything is digitalizing, and now is the right time, and everything is and this industry is just starting. So there's a lot of opportunities there.
No, I agree, and I it's as you said, like, you know, from an industry perspective too, it's something that, you know, is still going like into technological space, you know, in many ways. Of course, like, you know, if you look at the athlete and performance side, they've been, you know, doing this a little bit for you know, maybe like 10-15 years already, but like a lot of innovation has come like through that. And then like now I think like you see more and more from a business standpoint, you know, from like how do you help organizations, and people are talking about like, you know, maybe in the like ordinary tools that like normal business from more like experienced industries were already using. Now that's coming into sports, and of course, like, you know, that's an effect. It's still a young industry nonetheless. A lot has happened, and you got to keep that a little bit in mind. But there's also like so much, you know, growth, so much potential in the consumer market, in of course like the sports and entertainment industry, and just utilizing that. And I think, as you said, how do you essentially take advantage of that? And now more than ever, like, things has to be, you know, digitalized, you know, especially like no one can travel, more or less. You know, I haven't traveled in a year. It's been like completely different for me from last year, but you know, that's a different story. But yeah, I mean, like, and from, I'm just thinking like a little bit from an angel and investor perspective. And if you look like like just the foundation of a startup, and like what do you need essentially to succeed? What are some of the key points that you need in order to, you know, be a potential success story like Glovo or Badi that you invested in and so forth? Like, what do you look after?
I think the first one, well, there's several factors, but the first one is the market size.
Right.
That's a challenge, especially for sports tech. I guess later on we'll talk about it, but right. the market should be huge and the trend should be growing. You should have a growing trend. I think all the unicorns that you can find, they have something in common, that the market was huge.
Right.
And this is the first question. Is the market big enough for build a 100 million company in revenues? And that's not obvious because it's not easy. In my case, when we started the scuba diving business, scuba diving was very small. I remember that the biggest scuba diving store in Spain was doing like 2 million. So right. That was the market leader. So as you can imagine, it was so small. When we surpassed when we did 3 million, I was very happy because we got the #1 store in Spain. But this is so small, you know. You can say that you are the leader, but the leader of what? Because right. It's so small. The right. second thing is, if there's the market fit, your product and the need,
right?
Because it's extremely complicated to find the right product for the right for a big market, especially in sports. When I think I already seen like 25 companies that they are doing fan engagement, and
that's like the hot topic these days.
It's a hot topic. Is like holy grail that everybody is pursuing. But the thing is that it's extremely complicated to find one solution that there's no frictionless solution, and right. It's very complicated, no?
For sure.
So the market, the product market fit, the right product for the right market, right. And the third for me is a team.
Yeah.
Because it's not obvious. A lot of teams, they have a strong focus on the product. Other teams, they have a strong focus on sales. In our industry, normally you have more product-oriented teams rather to sales-oriented. And
right.
It should be very balanced. But in a startup, like in football, this is about scoring goals. So right. Sales maybe... even that everything should be balanced, a sales-driven startup always have more chances to succeed.
Right.
Yeah, and this is not obvious as well, because I think the 90% of the startups that I'm meeting, they are totally product-oriented.
Yeah.
Which is not bad, but if you are in Silicon Valley, probably that's okay. But if you are in Europe, you should have sales, and it's very important.
Looking into the future, the beginner faces a choice that leads him to the triumph, or not. Being surrounded by like-minded professionals can be the best guarantee that you actually take that crucial career step.
TradeInn Global is a digital network for sports jobs. It gives you the chance to be involved in the sports industry no matter who you are, regardless of gender, nationality, and experience.
Our AI system matches up talent with human resources. Candidates who align with the company's values and needs immediately get shortlisted. It saves time for HR and increases the opportunities available to applicants.
The platform identifies tailor-made recommendations based on user needs, so you're always aware of the possibilities out there right now.
TradeInn Global is a place where students gain key tips about jobs and build the valuable connections that are essential for people at the beginning of their career path.
The path from candidate to champion starts with a single step in the right direction. Sign up to TradeInn Global.
TradeInn Global, the best way to enter the sports industry.
No, for sure. I think there's some really great advice, and I think it's one thing that you're bringing up too, which is like, of course, fan engagement. It's like, that one thing that everyone's been focused on, and it's also like you talk about, like, okay, but what other stuff can you capitalize on? Like, what is different? Like, of course, like there should be competition when things are hot and things are moving forward, but we always like look at like what else do the industry need? Like, what can it contribute with that people haven't thought about yet, or that is a problem that people haven't really maybe like acknowledged or seen yet. And these are also like sort of like the thing as you talk about with the scuba diving. It's like, oh, I had this problem, but then and then you saw eventually that, okay, there were more people like you that actually had that problem, and hence you could build a business out of it too. But going a little bit back to your experience in FC Barcelona and the board there, and from your side, like what have you learned from this experience that you can bring, if you like looking into like a young sport professional mindset, like what could you learn, like what could you bring to them from this experience essentially?
Sure. I learned a lot during these 10 years.
For sure.
Probably the first story that I can share with you is that for someone like me, that I was 30 something years, I was from a small town here. I have no network in the industry. I have no network in Barcelona.
Yeah.
I think it was totally impossible to become board member. It was totally impossible. To become board member of FC Barcelona is like to become a minister in your country. It's as hard as that. And I work a lot. Every time that I went, somebody asked me about how I see myself in some years, I used to say, well, I want to become board member. And everybody were looking at me like, this guy is crazy. I'm telling you, yes, I want to be the president of your country. You say, who is this guy? He's crazy or what? No. So the first lesson that I got is that no matter how hard it is, sometimes it's very important to understand that it's totally different what is impossible with what is difficult. Sometimes we confuse the terms, what's difficult and hard. And the second thing that I learned is that the dynamics of a corporation are totally different compared with the dynamics of a startup.
Right.
In the startup, there's no politics. I mean, if we think that we have to go in this way, we'll go in this way, and that's it. In a corporation, there's other dynamics. I'm not going to say that it's better or worse, but it's totally different, and you need to learn how to play that, So if you want to start your startup or you want to join a startup, there's some rules. If you want to join a corporation, there's another rules.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And the third thing that I learned, and this is probably is more related with the topic of today, is that when I joined the board 10 years ago, technology and digital was nice to have, was not strategic, was something geek. I think that when I told them about how to build a global fan base, everybody were looking at me like I was a crazy guy. When I told them that content is a core business for us, they say, no, our core business is not to produce TV shows. Our core business is to play sports. And I think the third thing I learned is sometimes when you mix industries, you have some hybridification of your business model. Innovation happens because what I did there with the digital strategy is basically to use digital and technology to evolve our core business. Nowadays, content is one of the core business of FC Barcelona, but not only sport business, which is obvious. We started our Basa studios and we are producing several TV shows, documentaries, cartoons for kids, fiction movies, and and this business is significant nowadays. I cannot disclose the numbers, but there's a lot of millions of EBITDA business nowadays, a content business for Barca, and this is very important. So the third point is that with technology you can transform your core business, and this is beautiful. And there's a huge opportunity there.
No, for sure. And I mean, like, what a journey though. Like, and then you talk about, like, 10 years in the board there, and like as you said, look, going from technology being like, maybe nice to have and for more for the players, and then like, or maybe like transitioning more to, okay, we need like some tracking for our players and like making sure that their performance, and then you're like, well, what about like where does our fans come from, and like a big club like Barcelona, right, like with a global audience, need to capitalize on this, and obviously as they have. But yeah, it's a learning process, I think, for a lot of people, and especially now too. It's like people need to like, okay, how do we, utilize this digital position that we're in right now to make the most out of it. And this is also why it's important for the young students, and why we're doing this podcast too. Is like, okay, what should they focus on? Like, what should be some of their elements, and if they're interested in maybe like, starting their own venture, like either as an entrepreneur or a sport professional, like what do you see as some of like the key skill set and values that they should possess, because this is always interesting, I think.
Well, I will give you two advices, one more rational and one not that rational. A non-rational advice will be that you should focus on what you like. In my case, I focus on scuba diving 25 years ago, which is, it was a small market, it was a niche market, I mean, and I say, so it's important to focus on what you like, and if you enjoy something, focus on that. Maybe today is not a business, and a business takes long to be built. And the second advice, more rational, is that it's important to find a big market. And in our case, even the scuba diving was a small market. We make it big when we evolved from scuba diving to outdoor sports.
Right.
In 10 years, it was a scuba diving e-commerce, but then we joined a new CEO that nowadays he's probably one of the best entrepreneurs in Spain, and he's a major shareholder of the companies already. He bring the company from scuba diving, that is a niche market, to outdoor sports that is much bigger. Much bigger. So find what you love and focus on that, and look for a big market.
Nice. What about some of like, what do you see as like some of the key values that people should have, like from your side? Like, what kind of values are important for you? What do you look after? Like, even like when like you're evaluating teams in startups, like what kind of values do you see after?
Yeah, for me it's very easy. Well, values, everyone has their own values. All the values are good. But for me it's very important, the good people good. Good professionals, but with people that I will become friends. I think the most of my partners, executives, they've been with me for more than 15 years, and I think it will be impossible if they are not good professionals or they are not good people. But the concept of good people is very subjective, because maybe for me it's not the same, These people, I will go to have a dinner with this guy, but not professional dinner. I will go to the cinema. I will go to have a drink, but I would I would meet this guy for go to scuba diving. I will go to meet this guy for the weekend. I think this is the question.
Right. Is this someone that you can spend more time with besides the meeting room, you know?
That's right. I think there's a consultancy firm. I forgot which one. Maybe it was McKinsey. They say that they have the Wichita test. Imagine that you have a project in Wichita, US, that there's nothing besides work in a cold winter. And would you spend a winter with this guy sharing the same apartment? Yes or no? Yeah, the Wichita test.
I'm gonna keep that in mind. It's a good question. I'll bring that into my full analysis when we recruit new people.
Yeah, but that's important.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't mean that you have to become friends with everybody.
No,
you can or you cannot. But this is somebody that I will become friends with. Yeah. And the thing, this is important.
Absolutely, 100%. Dídac, and with that, I think we're pretty much at the end of our podcast. It's been going fast. I truly appreciate you taking the time, sharing your insights and your knowledge. I don't know if you have like some final words of wisdom before we wrap up.
Sure. Something that I would like to share is that sports tech is an amazing industry, but it's still very small. Very small. If someone is looking for an app tracking the performance of a professional footballer, that can be a great business, but it's very small, because for each professional footballer that you have, probably you have 10,000 non-professional footballers.
Right.
And sometimes the focus of the company can determine the size of the market. I will give you an example. The big explosion of an outdoor brand like North Face was when they went from providing high-tech equipment for go to the Himalaya.
Right.
They realized that the same equipment, the same code, you can dress it during the weekend for go to buy the bread.
Right.
And for every guy that is going to Himalaya, you have 10,000 that is going to buy the newspaper or the bread during the weekend. And to change your focus, it will change your market.
Right.
So I think almost the 90% of all the sports tech startups that I'm meeting, they have a focus in a very, very, very small market. And I think this is my last advice, that it's important to target the right market, and maybe it's better to target the guys who are going to buy the newspaper during the weekends instead of targeting the top sport guy that is going to the Himalaya.
Right. No, it's a really great advice, and it's a perfect way to end this podcast. So with that, Dídac, I would like to thank you once again for taking the time. And with every podcast video we're doing, we're always finishing up with "Vi snakkes," which means see you later in Norwegian. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Dídac.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.